pregnant wife. Instead, I found messages about a secret party where she jumped in a pool at 6 months pregnant. The DNA test I demanded revealed something so devastating, it destroyed 3 families. My name is Malcolm Shaw, though most people call me Mal. I'm 44 years old, and I've spent the last 12 years climbing the corporate ladder at TechCore Solutions in Austin, Texas. Senior project manager sounds impressive on paper, but what it really means is I'm the guy who makes sure million-dollar software projects don't implode while managing teams of developers who think deadlines are suggestions. The pay is solid, around $100,000 a year, but the stress follows me home like a shadow. My wife Gertrude, or Gertie as I've always called her, is 38. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue back in 2008, got married a year later. She was working as a dental hygienist then, but quit after our son James was born 8 years ago. Our daughter Scarlett came along 3 years later, and Gertie became a full-time mom. It seemed like the right choice at the time. We had the income, she wanted to be home with the kids, and I supported that decision completely. 6 months ago, Gertie told me she was pregnant again. Twins, the doctor said at the first ultrasound. I was shocked but happy. 2 more kids meant a bigger house, more expenses, but we could manage. What I didn't know was that she'd been keeping something from me, something that would change everything. 3 weeks ago, I came home early from work. We just wrapped up a major product launch ahead of schedule, and my boss actually told me to take the afternoon off. I was looking forward to surprising Gertie, maybe taking her and the kids out for an early dinner. The house was empty when I got there around 3 in the afternoon. Her car was gone, the kids were still at school, and there was this weird feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. I texted her, "Home early. Where are you?" No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. That's when I did something I'm not proud of. I opened her laptop, the one she leaves on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked, her Facebook Messenger already open. I told myself I was just checking to make sure she was okay, but deep down, I think I already knew I was looking for something else. The group chat with her friends was right there. Messages from earlier that day about some party they'd all attended last weekend. A party I knew nothing about. One of her friends, a woman named Kelly, had written, "Girl, you were wild Saturday night, jumping in the pool at 6 months pregnant. I thought I was going to have a heart attack." Another friend chimed in, "Ryan couldn't keep his eyes off you all night." Ryan Hale, my best friend since college. The guy who was best man at my wedding. The guy I'd known for 26 years. My hand started shaking as I scrolled through more messages. There were jokes, laughing emojis, references to things I didn't understand. Then I saw it, a message from Gertie herself from 2 days ago. "I still can't believe what happened with Ryan. I'm freaking out." Kelly's response, "Are you going to tell Mal?" Gertie, "Not yet. He's been so stressed with work. I need to figure this out first." I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at that screen, feeling like someone had just punched a hole through my chest. My pregnant wife had gone to a party without telling me. She'd been in a pool, pregnant with twins. And something had happened with Ryan, something she was hiding from me. The front door opened 20 minutes later. Gertie walked in carrying shopping bags, looking relaxed and happy until she saw me sitting there with her laptop open in front of me. Her face went pale. "Mal," she said, her voice careful, "you're home early." I looked up at her, and for the first time in 16 years of marriage, I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. Gertie set the shopping bags down slowly, like she was buying time to think. Her eyes darted from the laptop to my face, calculating her next move. I'd seen that look before when she was trying to figure out how to spin something, but never directed at me like this. "How long have you been home?" she asked, her voice tight. I ignored the question. "Tell me about the party." She blinked, playing dumb. "What party?" "Don't," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. The party last Saturday. The one where you jumped in a pool while 6 months pregnant with our twins." Her face flushed red. "You went through my laptop? You invaded my privacy." "Your privacy?" I stood up, anger flooding through me. "You're carrying my children, and you went to some party without telling me, did God knows what in a pool, and something happened with Ryan. So yeah, I looked at your laptop, and now you're going to tell me the truth." Gertie crossed her arms over her belly, defensive. "It was just a small get-together at Kelly's house. Nothing big. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact." "Overreact? You're 6 months pregnant with twins, and you were jumping in pools. What the hell were you thinking? She rolled her eyes, which only made my blood pressure spike higher. It wasn't like that, Mal. I barely got in the water. Kelly was exaggerating in her message. And Ryan. I stepped closer. What about Ryan? Your message said you couldn't believe what happened with him. What does that mean, Gertie? Her jaw tightened. Nothing happened. He was there, we talked, that's it. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. Then why did you write that you were freaking out? Why did Kelly ask if you were going to tell me? Because I knew you'd react exactly like this, she shouted. You'd turn a normal conversation into some big conspiracy theory. I felt something shift inside me, a clarity I hadn't expected. She wasn't going to tell me the truth. She was going to keep lying, keep deflecting, keep making me feel like I was the crazy one for asking legitimate questions. We're getting a DNA test, I said quietly. The room went silent. Gertie stared at me like I just slapped her. What did you just say? Her voice was barely a whisper. You heard me. After those twins are born, we're getting a DNA test. I want to know if they're mine. Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were real or another manipulation tactic. How dare you accuse me of that? I'm your wife, Malcolm. These are your children. Are they? I shot back. Because you've been lying to me about where you've been, what you've been doing, and now you're lying about Ryan. So forgive me if I don't just take your word for it anymore. You're insane, she hissed. You've completely lost your mind. Maybe I have, I said, grabbing my keys from the counter. But we're still doing the test. And until then, I'm staying at my brother's place. I walked past her toward the door. She grabbed my arm, panic replacing the anger in her eyes. Mal, wait. Don't leave. We need to talk about this. I pulled my arm free. We just did. And you chose to lie. So there's nothing left to say. I left her standing in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, and drove straight to my brother Holden's apartment across town. Holden Shaw lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in South Austin, about 20 minutes from my house. He'd been a patrol officer with the Austin PD for 12 years, working his way up to detective 3 years ago. At 37, he was still single, married to the job as he liked to say. When I showed up at his door at 6 in the evening with a duffel bag, and probably the worst poker face in Texas, he didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside and let me in. Beers in the fridge, Holden said, closing the door behind me. Couch pulls out. You look like hell, by the way. I dropped my bag and collapsed onto his couch. Gertie's been lying to me. Holden grabbed 2 Shiner box from the kitchen and handed me one. About what? I told him everything. The party she'd hidden from me, jumping in the pool while pregnant with twins, the cryptic messages about Ryan, her refusal to come clean about what actually happened. Holden listened without interrupting, his cop face on, processing every detail like he was taking a witness statement. When I finished, he took a long pull from his beer. So you demanded a DNA test? Yeah, and then I left. Good, Holden said flatly. That's exactly what you should have done. I looked at him, surprised. You don't think I'm overreacting? Hell no. Mal, I've been a cop long enough to know when someone's lying. And for what you're telling me, Gertie's story has more holes than a shooting range target. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Let me ask you something. When you confronted her, did she try to explain what actually happened? Or did she attack you for snooping? I thought back to our argument in the kitchen. She went straight on the offense. Made it about me invading her privacy. Classic deflection. She's hiding something, brother. The question is how bad it is. Holden finished his beer and set the bottle down with a thud. I see this pattern all the time in domestic cases. When someone's caught doing something wrong, they don't defend the action. They attack the method of discovery. Makes the accuser defensive instead of staying on offense. My stomach churned. You think she cheated? Holden shrugged. I think she went to a party she knew you wouldn't approve of, did something reckless while pregnant, and something happened with your best friend that she's terrified to tell you about. Whether that's physical cheating or emotional cheating or just crossing lines she knew were wrong, I don't know. But that DNA test, that's not you being paranoid. That's you being smart. I keep thinking about James and Scarlett, I said quietly. They're going to ask where I am. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. You and Mom are working through some grown-up problems. You're staying with Uncle Holden for a bit, but you love them and it's not their fault. He stood up and grabbed another beer. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They already sense something's wrong. Better to give them a simple truth they can understand, then let them imagine something worse. What if those twins aren't mine? The question hung in the air like smoke. Holden's jaw tightened. Then we deal with it. But first things first. Tomorrow morning, you call a lawyer. Not to file for divorce yet, but to understand your rights. Texas is a community property state, and if this goes south, you need to know where you stand financially and custody-wise. Already thinking that far ahead? I'm a detective, Mal. I plan for worst-case scenarios. It's what I do. He sat back down across from me. And speaking of worst-case scenarios, you need to talk to Ryan. Face-to-face. Tomorrow. The thought made my blood pressure spike. I don't know if I can do that without punching him. You won't punch him, Holden said firmly. Because you're better than that. And because assault charges won't help your custody case if it comes to that. But you will look him in the eye and ask him what happened. And you'll know if he's lying. You've known the guy for 26 years. You'll see it. I nodded slowly. Holden was right. I needed answers, and I needed them from the source. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Gertie. Please come home. We need to talk. The kids are asking for you. I showed it to Holden. He read it and shook his head. Manipulation. She's using the kids to guilt you back. Classic move. Don't respond tonight. Let her sit with what she's done. Let her think about how she's going to explain this. I set my phone face down on the coffee table and opened another beer. Tomorrow I'd start getting real answers. Tonight, I just needed to breathe. 3 weeks crawled by like years. I stayed at Holden's apartment, visited the kids every other evening after work, and went through the motions at TechCore while my personal life imploded around me. Gertie and I barely spoke except about logistics involving James and Scarlett. She'd agreed to the DNA test after initially refusing, probably because her lawyer told her fighting it would look worse in divorce proceedings. The day the twins were born, I was there. Despite everything, despite the anger and betrayal churning in my gut, I could not be there. 2 boys, born healthy at 38 weeks. Gertie named them without consulting me, Carter and Dylan. I held them in the hospital, looked at their tiny faces, and felt absolutely nothing. No connection, no joy, no paternal instinct kicking in. Just a hollow numbness that scared me more than anything else in this nightmare. The DNA samples were taken the next day, per the court order my lawyer had filed. A simple cheek swab for each baby, one for me. The lab tech, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, said results would take 7 to 10 business days. I counted every single one of those days like a prisoner marking time on a cell wall. On day 9, I got the email while sitting in my office at TechCore. Results available. I was supposed to be reviewing code for a new project launch, but I've been staring at the same screen for 2 hours, unable to focus. When my phone chimed with that notification, my hand shook so badly, I almost dropped it. I clicked the link, logged in with trembling fingers, downloaded the PDF report. The first test result appeared on screen. Carter Shaw. Probability of paternity, 0%. My vision blurred. I scrolled down, already knowing what I'd see, but hoping somehow I was wrong. Dylan Shaw. Probability of paternity, 0%. Neither twin was mine. Neither one. 21 months of my life, believing I was going to be a father again, planning for these babies, preparing the nursery with James, helping me paint the walls, buying double of everything. And they weren't even mine. The room started spinning, and I had to grip the edge of my desk to stay upright. I forwarded the results to Holden immediately, then called him. He picked up on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. The results came in, I said, my voice hollow. Neither twin is mine. Silence on the other end for 3 heartbeats. Then, I'm coming to get you. Don't drive. Don't do anything. Stay in your office. I'll be there in 15 minutes. There's more, I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to hold it together. I need to know about Scarlett. What do you mean? I need to test Scarlett too. If Gertie was cheating with Ryan recently enough for those twins to be his, how long has this been going on? What if? I couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were too massive, too devastating. Holden's voice turned hard as steel. I'll make some calls. We can do a private test without Gertie's consent if you have access to Scarlett's toothbrush or hairbrush. But Mal, are you sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance is. I have to know. I interrupted. I need to know which of my children are actually mine. I can't live in uncertainty anymore. I can't look at them and wonder. That's not fair to them or to me. Okay, sit tight. I'm on my way. I hung up and opened my desk drawer, pulled out the framed photo I kept there. Scarlett and James at the zoo last summer, both grinning at the camera with ice cream smeared on their faces. James had my eyes, my chin, even my stubborn cowlick that never laid flat. Scarlett looked like Gertie, always had. Same blonde hair, same delicate features, same smile. My phone rang. Gertie. I let go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Then a text message appeared. We need to talk about the results. I typed back one sentence. You lied. The twins aren't mine. Her response came fast. I can explain. Please. Let me explain everything. I blocked her number and shut off my phone completely. Holden arrived 12 minutes later, found me still sitting at my desk, staring at nothing. He didn't say anything, didn't try to comfort me with empty words. He just grabbed my coat and keys and walked me out of the building like I was a suspect he was bringing in for questioning. I found Ryan Hale at his construction office on the east side of town. He owned a mid-sized contracting company that specialized in residential renovations, something he'd built from the ground up over the past 15 years. We'd been friends since college, roommates junior year, and I'd stood beside him at his wedding to his wife, Kelly, 9 years ago. The same Kelly who'd been at that party with Gertie. Ryan was in the parking lot loading tools into his truck when I pulled up. He saw me, and his face went pale. He knew. Of course he knew. Guilty people always know when the reckoning comes. Mal, Ryan said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hey man, what brings you by? I walked up to him slowly, keeping my hands visible. Holden's words echoed in my head about assault charges. We need to talk. Now. Ryan glanced at his watch. I've got a job site to get to. Make time. I said, my voice flat and cold. Because this conversation is happening one way or another. He set down the toolbox he was holding and wiped his hands on his jeans. Okay, let's go inside. His office was a small converted house with blueprints covering every wall and the smell of coffee and sawdust everywhere. He offered me a chair, but I stayed standing. I wanted the height advantage. The twins aren't mine, I said without preamble. DNA test came back. 0% match. Ryan's face crumbled. He sat down heavily in his desk chair, looking 10 years older in an instant. Jesus, Mal. I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. Are they yours? He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my friend's eyes before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Tell me what happened at that party. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to stay calm. All of it. And don't you dare lie to me. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, looking like he might be sick. It wasn't supposed to happen. Kelly organized this pool party at her friend's place. She invited Gertie, some other women from their book club. I came by to drop off some steaks for the grill because Kelly asked me to. I was supposed to leave, but Gertie was there, and we started talking. Talking, I repeated flatly. She was drinking. Not a lot, but enough. She seemed different, Mal. More open, more. I don't know. She started flirting with me. I should have shut it down right there, but I didn't. We kept talking, ended up by the pool alone while everyone else was inside. My fists clenched. And then what? Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. She kissed me, said she felt invisible in her own marriage, that you were always working, never paid attention to her anymore. I told her she should talk to you, but then she kissed me again and I didn't stop her. You slept with my pregnant wife, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Not at the party. Later. She texted me the next week. Said she couldn't stop thinking about it, about me. We met at a hotel twice. I swear to God, Mal, I tried to end it after the second time. I told her it was wrong, that we were destroying our marriages, our friendship. She agreed. We stopped. When was this? 7 months ago. Right around when she must have gotten pregnant. The timeline matched. The betrayal was complete. My best friend had slept with my wife, gotten her pregnant, and then looked me in the eye at family barbecues and football games for 7 months without saying a word. Does Kelly know? I asked. Ryan shook his head. No, I couldn't tell her. She'd leave me, take her kids. Mal, please. You're going to take a DNA test. I interrupted. For both twins. Today. And when it comes back showing you the father, you're going to man up and tell Kelly everything. That'll destroy my family. Your family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You destroyed mine first. You don't get to hide behind your kids now. You made your choice when you slept with my wife. Ryan stood up, desperation in his eyes. Mal, We've been friends for 26 years. We're not friends anymore, I said, turning toward the door. We're nothing. Get the test done. My lawyer will be in touch. I walked out of his office and sat in my truck for 5 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I wanted to go back in there and break his jaw, but Holden was right. I was better than that. I had to be better than that for James and Scarlett. 2 days later, I picked up James and Scarlett from Gertie's parents' house. My in-laws, Richard and Patricia, had always been good to me, but I could see the strain in their faces when they opened the door. Gertie had obviously told them her version of events, painting me as the paranoid husband who'd abandoned his pregnant wife. The kids are in the playroom, Patricia said stiffly, not inviting me inside. I need to talk to you both, I said, about the DNA results. Richard's face hardened. Gertie told us you demanded that ridiculous test. Malcolm, how could you? The twins aren't mine, I interrupted. 0% match. Both of them. The color drained from Patricia's face. Richard looked like I'd punched him. That's not possible, Patricia whispered. There must be a mistake. I pulled out my phone and showed them the lab results. Watched their faces as reality sank in. Their daughter had cheated on me, gotten pregnant by another man, and tried to pass the babies off as mine. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, I said quietly. But you deserve to know the truth. I'm here to pick up James and Scarlett. I'll have them back Sunday night. Richard nodded slowly, looking shell-shocked. They're good kids, Malcolm. Whatever happens between you and Gertie, those kids need their father. I know. That's why I'm fighting for them. I collected the kids and drove them to Holden's apartment, where I'd set up air mattresses in the spare room. James was quiet in the back seat, too observant for an 8-year-old. Scarlett sang along to the radio, blissfully unaware that her world was falling apart. That night, after putting them to bed, I retrieved Scarlett's toothbrush from the bathroom and sealed it in a plastic bag. Holden had arranged for the private lab to run the test. Results in 48 hours. My hand shook as I labeled the bag. You okay? Holden asked from the doorway. No, but I need to know. The next 2 days were torture. I took the kids to the park, helped James with his homework, watched Scarlett's favorite movies, all while wondering if she was really mine. Every time she called me daddy, my heart broke a little more. On Saturday afternoon, the email came. I was at the grocery store with both kids when my phone buzzed. Holden had programmed his number to call me immediately when the results arrived. I'm with the kids, I answered quietly, walking away from the cereal aisle where Scarlett was debating between 2 boxes. Results are in, Holden said. You sitting down? Just tell me. Scarlett's yours. 99.9% probability. She's your daughter, Mal. The relief hit me like a wave. I had to lean against a shelf to stay upright. You're sure? Positive. James is definitely yours based on appearance, and Scarlett is confirmed yours biologically. Out of 4 kids, you've got 2. The twins belong to Ryan. I looked over at Scarlett, who was now asking James which cereal he thought was better. My daughter. My actual, biological daughter. The weight that had been crushing my chest for 2 days lifted slightly. There's something else, Holden said, his voice careful. I did some digging into Gertie's medical records. Got a contact in the hospital records department who owes me a favor. What did you find? 3 years ago, Gertie had a procedure, coded as a D&C for miscarriage, but the dates don't match up with when she told you about the miscarriage. She was further along than she claimed. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying it might not have been a miscarriage. The paperwork suggests an elective termination, and the timing puts conception right around when Ryan said they first got together. The grocery store suddenly felt too bright, too loud. Gertie had lied about that too. The miscarriage I'd comforted her through, held her while she cried. That might have been an abortion to cover up an affair. I'm coming over, I said. Can you watch the kids for an hour? Already got pizza ordered. Bring them by. Monday morning started with an unexpected visitor. I was getting James ready for school at Holden's apartment when my phone rang. Unknown number with an Austin area code. Mr. Shaw? This is Dorothy Henderson. I live next door to you and Gertrude on Maple Street. Mrs. Henderson was a retired schoolteacher in her 70s who'd lived on our street for 40 years. She'd always been kind to the kids, bringing them cookies at Christmas and letting them play with her ancient golden retriever. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. How can I help you? I need to speak with you in person, dear. Today, if possible. It's about Gertrude and that situation you're dealing with. I have something you need to see. An hour later, I was sitting in Mrs. Henderson's immaculate living room, James at school, and Scarlett with Holden for the morning. The older woman brought me tea and sat across from me, her face troubled. I debated whether to get involved, she said carefully. But I've watched you with those children for 8 years, Malcolm. You're a good father and a good man. What's happening to you isn't right. She pulled out an iPad, newer than mine, and opened a folder full of video files. I installed a security camera system 6 months ago after some break-ins in the neighborhood. The camera on my driveway has a clear view of your house, particularly your driveway and front door. My pulse quickened. You recorded something. Several somethings. Mrs. Henderson selected a video dated 4 months ago. The timestamp showed 1:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. This is from January 14th. You were at work, I believe. The videos show my driveway. A silver Honda Accord pulled up, and I recognized it immediately. Ryan's work vehicle. He got out, looked around like he was checking if anyone was watching, then walked to my front door. It opened before he could knock. Gertie appeared, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, hair and makeup done. She pulled him inside and closed the door. Mrs. Henderson fast-forwarded. He left 3 hours later. The next video was from January 28th. Same car, same time of day, same furtive behavior. Then February 11th, February 25th, March 10th. Every 2 weeks like clockwork, Ryan coming to my house on Tuesday afternoons while I was at work. There are 17 separate occasions over 6 months, Mrs. Henderson said quietly. Always Tuesdays. Always while you were gone. The last one was a week before the twins were born. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just a couple of mistakes at a party in a hotel. This was systematic, deliberate, ongoing. In my house. In my bed, probably. While I was working to support our family. Can I have copies of these? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I already made you a flash drive. Everything's on there, organized by date with timestamps. She handed me a small USB drive. I also wrote a statement documenting what I observed, signed and dated. Your lawyer will need it for court. I took the drive with trembling hands. Why are you doing this for me? Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. Because 30 years ago, my husband did the same thing to me. Had an affair with a woman from his office, right under my nose for 2 years. Back then, I had no proof, no evidence, nothing. He took everything in the divorce because I couldn't prove his infidelity. I don't want that happening to you, dear. You deserve better. I stood up and hugged this woman who barely knew me, but was willing to involve herself in my nightmare to help a neighbor. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. Give those children my love, she said. And Malcolm, don't let Gertrude take your house. That's your home, where you've raised your son and daughter. Fight for it. I drove straight to David Patterson's office and handed him the flash drive. He plugged it into his computer, watched 30 seconds of the first video, and smiled for the first time since I'd hired him. This changes everything, David said. She committed adultery in the marital home repeatedly over 6 months. In Texas, that matters. A lot. The judge is going to crucify her. What about the twins? I asked. Ryan's confirmed they're his. DNA test came back this morning. David nodded, making notes. Good. That means he's on the hook for child support. Not you. We'll file to establish paternity and remove you from the birth certificates. You won't owe a dime for those babies. And my house. With this evidence, you keep the house. Probably get primary custody of James and Scarlett too. Gertie's going to be lucky if she gets supervised visitation after lying about paternity and conducting an affair in your marital home while pregnant. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than rage and despair. I felt hope. Not for my marriage. That was dead and buried. But hope that I wouldn't lose everything. Hope that James and Scarlett would stay with me. Hope that justice might actually exist. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out the information Holden had found about Gertie's procedure 3 years ago. She lied about a miscarriage. It might have been an abortion to cover up the affair. David read through the medical records, his expression darkening. If we can prove she terminated a pregnancy to hide infidelity, that's going to play very badly for her in court. Very badly. Let me work on getting the full medical file subpoenaed. I left his office feeling like I could breathe again. The evidence was mounting. The truth was coming out. And soon, everyone would know exactly who Gertrude Shaw really was. The emergency hearing for temporary custody was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Gertie's lawyer had filed a motion demanding I return to the house, claiming I'd abandoned my family. My lawyer filed a counter-motion with Mrs. Henderson's video evidence attached. Tuesday night, Gertie called me from her mother's number, bypassing the block I'd put on her cell. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mal, please," Gertie said, her voice raw from crying. "We need to talk before court tomorrow. Face to face. Just you and me. There's nothing to talk about. You lied about everything. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But we can fix this. For the kids. For our family. Please, just meet me for coffee. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Part of me wanted to hang up. But another part, the part that had loved this woman for 16 years, wanted answers. Real answers. Not the deflections and lies she'd been feeding me. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. at Central Perk on Congress Avenue," I said. 1 hour. Then we go to court. "Thank you, Mal. Thank you." I showed up 15 minutes early, taking a corner table with my back to the wall like Holden had taught me. Gertie arrived exactly at 7, looking exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweats instead of her usual put-together appearance. She looked like the weight of her lies was finally crushing her. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she'd brought from home. "Thank you for coming. You have 1 hour. Start talking." Gertie took a shaky breath. "It started 18 months ago. Ryan and I don't even know how it happened. We were just talking at a barbecue, and he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. You were always working, always stressed about TechCore, and I felt invisible in my own marriage. So you slept with my best friend," I said flatly. "It wasn't like that at first. We just talked. Text messages, phone calls when you were at work. It was emotional before it was physical. But then Kelly went to visit her sister in Dallas for a week, and Ryan invited me to lunch, and..." She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. "And you made a choice. Multiple choices. For 18 months. I got pregnant 3 years ago during the affair," she admitted. "I didn't know if the baby was yours or Ryan's. I couldn't take that risk, Mel. I couldn't. So I told you I had a miscarriage and I ended it. I've regretted it every day since." The confirmation of what Holden had discovered hit harder than I expected. "You killed my possible child to cover up your affair. I don't know if it was yours. That's the point. I couldn't know. So you made that decision without me. Just like you made every other decision in this nightmare without me." I leaned forward. "The twins. When did you know they weren't mine?" Gertie's face crumbled. "I suspected from the beginning. The timing was wrong. We'd barely been intimate for months, and with Ryan it was constant. Every Tuesday, sometimes more. I knew, Mel, deep down I knew. And you were going to let me raise them as mine. I hope they were yours. I hoped the test would prove you wrong, and we could move past this." I laughed, a bitter sound that made other customers glance over. "Move past this? Gertie, you destroyed our marriage. You destroyed my friendship with Ryan. You lied about everything for 18 months, and now you want me to just move past it. What do you want me to say?" She snapped, her grief turning to anger. "That I'm sorry. I am. That I made mistakes. I did. But you weren't innocent either, Mal. You were never home. You chose your career over your family every single time. Don't you dare turn this on me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I worked 60-hour weeks to give you the life you wanted. The house, the cars, the private school for James. I did that for us. For our family. And you thanked me by sleeping with my best friend in our bed while I was at work providing for you." Gertie opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She knew I was right. I stood up, pulling cash from my wallet and dropping it on the table. "I'll see you in court. And Gertie, you're going to lose. The house, custody, everything. Because I have evidence of every lie you told, every time Ryan came over, every choice you made. Mrs. Henderson has it all on camera." Her face went white. "What?" 17 separate occasions over 6 months. Video evidence with timestamps. Your lawyer should have advised you better. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. The courtroom was packed Wednesday morning. Gertie sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Jennifer Hayes who had a reputation for destroying husbands in divorce court. But today, she looked worried. Very worried. Judge Patricia Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s, reviewed the evidence packets both lawyers had submitted. She'd been on the bench for 20 years, and had probably seen every variation of marital betrayal imaginable. But even she raised her eyebrows when she got to Mrs. Henderson's video evidence. "Mr. Patterson," Judge Morrison said, addressing my lawyer, "these security camera recordings, they've been authenticated." David Patterson, my lawyer, stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Dorothy Henderson is present in the courtroom and available to testify. The videos were taken from her personal security system, and we have the original files with metadata intact showing dates and times. We also have cellular tower records placing Mr. Hale's phone at the defendant's residence on all 17 occasions documented." The judge turned to Gertie's lawyer. "Ms. Hayes, I'm assuming you've seen this evidence." Jennifer Hayes looked like she'd been sucker punched. "We received it yesterday afternoon, Your Honor. We haven't had adequate time to review." "The evidence is date-stamped over a 6-month period," the judge interrupted. "How much time do you need to review videos of a man entering and leaving the marital home while Mr. Shaw was at work?" She looked at Gertie directly. "Mrs. Shaw, did you conduct an extramarital affair with Mr. Ryan Hale in your marital home while your husband was working?" Gertie's face was white as paper. Your Honor, I made mistakes." "Yes or no, Mrs. Shaw?" "Yes," Gertie whispered. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. "And the twins born 3 weeks ago, Carter and Dylan Shaw. Mr. Patterson has submitted DNA evidence showing Mr. Shaw is not the biological father. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you knew this was a possibility before their birth, yet you allowed Mr. Shaw to believe he was the father and made preparations for these children?" Gertie's lawyer tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client was confused about paternity." She was confused. The judge's voice could have frozen water. "She conducted a systematic affair over 6 months, became pregnant, and was confused about who the father might be. Ms. Hayes, I suggest your client stop insulting this court's intelligence." I sat at the defense table watching my wife's lies unravel in real time. Holden sat behind me in the gallery, and I could feel his satisfied presence at my back. Judge Morrison continued. "I've also reviewed medical records subpoenaed from Austin Regional Hospital regarding a procedure Mrs. Shaw underwent 3 years ago. The records indicate an elective termination of pregnancy at 12 weeks, not a miscarriage, as Mrs. Shaw reported to her husband." "Mrs. Shaw, did you terminate a pregnancy without your husband's knowledge?" Gertie was openly crying now. "I didn't know whose baby it was. I couldn't." "That's enough." The judge closed the file folder with a sharp snap. "Here's my ruling. Primary physical custody of James Shaw and Scarlett Shaw is awarded to Mr. Malcolm Shaw. Mrs. Shaw will have supervised visitation every other weekend pending completion of a psychological evaluation. The marital home at 2847 Maple Street remains with Mr. Shaw. Mrs. Shaw will vacate the premises within 30 days. Jennifer Hayes stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client has nowhere to go. Your client should have considered that before conducting an affair in a home her husband paid for." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mr. Shaw, I'm removing your name from the birth certificates of Carter and Dylan Shaw. Mr. Ryan Hale will be listed as the biological father, and he will be responsible for all child support and medical expenses. You owe nothing for these children." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I had to grip the table. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "Mrs. Shaw will pay Mr. Shaw's legal fees in the amount of $12,000. This case is closed. Court adjourned." The gavel came down like thunder. Gertie collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her lawyer was already gathering papers, probably planning her exit strategy from this disaster. I stood up on shaky legs and turned to Holden, who pulled me into a bear hug. "You did it," Holden said quietly. "You got your kids." David Patterson shook my hand. "Congratulations, Malcolm. That's about as complete a victory as I've ever seen in family court. Judge Morrison doesn't usually come down that hard, but your ex-wife's behavior was egregious even by affair standards." I looked back at Gertie one last time. She was staring at me with hollow eyes, probably realizing she'd lost everything. The house, the kids, her reputation. Ryan would be stuck paying for twins that destroyed his marriage to Kelly. And I would go home with my real children, to my home, to start rebuilding. "Let's go get James and Scarlett," I said to Holden. "It's time to bring them home." 8 months later, autumn arrived in Austin with cooler temperatures and the promise of fresh starts. James and Scarlett adjusted to our new normal better than I'd hoped. We stayed in a house on Maple Street, the place where they'd grown up, where all their memories lived. I converted the nursery I'd been preparing for the twins into a home office where I could work remotely 3 days a week, spending more time with the kids. James started third grade with confidence I hadn't seen in him before. His teacher said he was excelling, particularly in math and science. Scarlett began kindergarten and came home every day with stories about her new friends and the things she was learning. Kids are resilient in ways adults never manage to be. Gertie saw them every other Saturday afternoon for 4 hours at a supervised visitation center. The court-mandated therapist said she was making progress, though I had my doubts. She'd moved in with her parents after I sold her car to recoup some of the money she'd spent during the affair. The college fund I protected for James was intact, and I started a new account for Scarlett. Ryan Hale's life imploded exactly as it should have. Kelly divorced him within 6 weeks of the court ruling, taking their 2 kids and half of everything he owned. He sold his construction company to pay child support for 4 children, his 2 with Kelly and the twins he'd fathered with Gertie. Last I heard, he was working as a site foreman for someone else's company, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and drowning in debt. Holden saw him at a gas station once and said he looked 20 years older than his age. Gertie struggled with twin boys on her own. Her parents helped, but raising 2 infants at 38 while working part-time at a dental office wasn't the life she'd imagined. She'd made choices, and choices had consequences. I felt no sympathy. Mrs. Henderson still lived next door, and her golden retriever passed away in September. James and Scarlett helped her bury him in her backyard, and she cried while telling them stories about the good dog he'd been. She'd become like a grandmother to my kids, someone they could trust when the adult world got too complicated. I started dating again in October. Nothing serious yet. A woman named Rachel who worked in marketing at a company we partnered with. She was kind, funny, and most importantly, she had no connection to my past. We took things slow. I wasn't ready to introduce her to the kids, but Holden met her and gave his approval, which meant something. Work at Tech Core stabilized. I took that promotion to regional manager finally, the one I'd almost lost during the chaos. The raise meant I could put more away for the kids' futures and take them on a real vacation next summer. James wanted to see the Grand Canyon. Scarlett wanted to go to Disney World. We'd figured out. One Saturday in November, I was raking leaves in the front yard while James and Scarlett jumped in the piles I'd made. Mrs. Henderson came out of her house with fresh apple cider and homemade cookies, something she did frequently now. "You're looking good, Malcolm," she said, watching the kids play. "Happy. Really happy." I looked at James, chasing Scarlett through the leaves, both of them laughing without a care in the world. "I'm happy. It took a while to get here, but yeah, we're good. You did right by those children. Fought for them when it mattered. Your father would be proud. My dad had passed away 5 years ago, but I thought about him a lot during this nightmare. He'd been married to my mother for 42 years before cancer took him, and he taught me what real commitment looked like, what real love looked like, not the twisted, selfish version Gertie had tried to pass off as marriage. Thanks, Mrs. Henderson, for everything. The evidence you gave me, it saved my life." She patted my arm. "You saved your own life, dear. I just gave you the tools. You did the hard work." That evening, after putting James and Scarlett to bed, I sat on the back porch with a beer and looked at the stars. Holden had texted earlier asking if I wanted to grab dinner tomorrow. Rachel had sent a funny meme about bad marketing campaigns. My boss had emailed praising the latest project delivery. Life wasn't perfect. I still had moments where the betrayal stung, where I wondered how I'd missed the signs for so long. But those moments were getting fewer and farther between. What I had now was real relationships with my kids, real friendships with people I could trust, a real future that I was building on my own terms. Gertie had tried to destroy me. She'd lied, cheated, manipulated, and betrayed everything we'd built. But she'd failed. I was still standing. My kids were thriving. And every day that passed, I got a little bit stronger. The stars were bright that night, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could see clearly.